Hey, thanks for joining me today for episode number 70 of Podcasting Your Brand. I'm your host, producer Jemmy, providing learning lessons for you to podcast your brand. And today I'm going to be giving you my next podcasting 101 topic, best practices for submitting yourself to be a guest on other podcasts. And this episode is brought to you by my own brand, Flintstone Media. Listen in and let's do this. First, by starting with one of my daily tips.
Hey, it is producer Jemmy here. So my lead content producer, George, and I were setting up the distribution for one of our clients' new shows yesterday, which brought this tip to mind for you today. And it's super fundamental, but I cannot tell you how important this is. You need to make sure that your show is everywhere on all the podcast players, everything from iTunes and Spotify to Amazon and Stitcher and TuneIn and everything. Deezer is a major platform in India. You want to make sure you're on that too. Pickcherries is an innovative platform where you can clip out a mini piece of content. Your listeners can clip out content. Make sure you're on there too. YouTube, you've heard me talk about that. Everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. iHeartRadio has a 60-day waiting period. Your show needs to be live for 60 days. So as you're doing this, count 60 days ahead, put a pin in on that date, and submit your show to iHeart. Then at least every year, if not every 6 months, just do a quick Google search, see if there are any other new podcast players that have come to market, and make sure that you submit your show so you continue to be found everywhere. And also continue to come back here every day for more tips, podcastingyourbrand.com. I'm producer Jemmy.
So be sure to subscribe to me on TikTok if it's still around, on Instagram, Clapper, YouTube, on all the social medias, so you get all of my tips and you get them first. I also want you to take advantage of a way to work with me in a small group setting, and that's through my workshops and masterminds. So if you're launching a show, you can take my launch mastermind, and that is a week-long workshop with me live where I will have you launched and ready to go. Or if you already have a show, then you can maximize your show's potential with my podcast maximization workshop. And all the information about all of them and either one, and for you to sign up, is at toppodcastworkshop.com. So go ahead and check that out today. Also, I want to draw your attention to an opportunity that I have, which is to go speak at a panel on podcasting at the Mom 2.0 Summit. I'm really, really excited about that. So it's in Scottsdale, Arizona in May. If you can make it, tickets are available as well. flintstonemedia.com/mom2. Okay, now let's get on to today's lesson. So like I described in the last episode with my pro podcasting peer, Kate Erickson Dumas, guesting on other shows is a wonderful way to grow your audience. But what are the best practices for doing so? All right. So we as podcasters, you may get every once in a while or quite often, you may get a request, somebody submitting themselves to be a guest on your show. And people do that in all kinds of ways. But if the shoe's on the other foot, what's the best way for you to do so? So we're going to be talking about that. But first, let's talk about why this is so great. Let's recap really quickly from episode 69. The main reason why it's so great. It is so great because you're putting yourself in front of an audience who's already raised their hand and said, we are podcast consumers. So they are so much more likely than really any other medium of audience to go over and listen to your show as well. So it's a fantastic way to grow your audience. And if you go into episode 69, which I'll link in the show notes, you'll find all the different ways that Kate and I discussed on how to level up this opportunity, because it is massive indeed. But we're going to bring this back down to the nuts and bolts today. So let's talk about first with what you even need to do to find a show. How do you find a show that you want to be a guest on? Okay, well, the easiest way is to go into your podcast players, look up your own subject matter, your own topic of your own show, and see what else exists in the space. Then listen to an episode or two of those shows and see if you really like the host. See if that you think that they're have good value. Let's see if their shows has good potential. Now, one of the main things I don't want you to pay attention to, and this is often a mistake, don't focus on only going on those big shows. I believe Kate and I discussed this on episode 69, and I'll reiterate the point here again. Because a show, even if it's just starting out and it's really small, it has a very tiny audience, you're going to live in that show's back channel forever. So as that show grows and as it continues to funnel in new listeners, your show, your episode is going to continue to be discovered. So don't poo-poo a show just because it's small. Okay. I don't want that to be what you're looking at. But first, look at what other shows are just within your space and just kind of take a look at how they resonate with you. Do you think you enjoy the process of being on that show? Would you like the experience? Then I want you to think about other shows that your guests have been on. This is a really phenomenal hack. So guests that you've had on your own show. Look at, you can even ask them, you can say, hey, what are some other shows that you've been on that you've really enjoyed your experience on? And let them tell you what has really bubbled up to the surface for them. But then also you can just go look, oftentimes they're going to do something I'm going to suggest that you do in just a minute. And they've shared other shows that they've been a guest on. So go look at those shows. It's right there in front of your face saying, hey, these are other shows related to the guests that have been on my show. So it's probably going to be closely related to my subject matter. Maybe I can be a guest too. So that's a great other way to do it. So looking up shows on the podcast players in your space, looking up shows that have where your guests have also been a guest on their shows as well. And then last but not least, look up shows where you think they're adjacent spaces. They're other spaces where you think your advice could be really, really helpful. So let's say I have a couple of examples. Let's say you have a show on property management, like my friends at Straight Up Chicago Investor. Okay, well, maybe there's an opportunity for you to be a guest because of your expertise in property management. You're able to know some of those in property investment. You're able to know some of the nuances of that, of the laws, of the finances of all that, and da-da-da. Maybe you can go onto a show about wills and estate planning and offer your corner of expertise in that way. That's just one example. Okay. Now let's take it out of something a little kind of depressing, wills and estate planning. Let's bring in the fun. My friend Johnny Pike over at Back of the Cereal Box. Okay. He talks about cereal and 80s nostalgia. It's a great, great show. If you haven't checked it out, please do. Oh my gosh, I love a show. But for example, if you do a show on cereal and 80s nostalgia, then maybe you can be a guest on a show that does trivia that centers around 80s type stuff, or a show that deep dives into one particular area of that 80s nostalgia, like toys or movies or music or something of that nature, where you can go on and give a really great deep dive, fun, entertaining perspective on it. So look for that. It may not be exactly in your lane, and that's actually a positive. That could be a positive. Looking at something that's adjacent to your lane can be just as powerful as looking at your direct lane of site that you actually live in already. Okay. But also, while you're looking for great shows, and you're going to hear me say this about a lot of different things in podcasting, because I'm a firm believer that when we're building a brand, especially if we're entrepreneurs, small business owners, whatever it is, when we're building a brand, the reputation of that brand is everything. Okay. So because of that, you need to make sure that you're hitching your brand to other brands that have a good reputation. So as you're doing this research, as you're looking at other shows, just do a quick Google search, see if there are any red flags about the show, see if there are any reviews about the show, if there's anything that anybody said about a terrible experience that they've had, if there's any controversy about the host, anything like that, just stay far away. But otherwise, those are the kind of shows that you want. You want shows that are in your space or adjacent to your space that you can really share some fun, good value, and maybe even give it a different angle of what you're used to talking about, but just from a different lens. That can be really interesting and bring in new people to your show. Okay. So now you found some shows that you want to submit yourself to be a guest to, and you've listened to a couple of episodes. I cannot stress that enough. Listen to at least one episode of that show so that you can have a good sense of what that show is. And also you can honestly and sincerely and genuinely talk about the show, about how much you like it, or something about the show that was brought up, an element or a topic that you brought up that you really liked it, that resonated with you or landed really well, or you want to dive into more. Like, you can't do that if you haven't actually listened to the show. So at least one episode. Okay. So yes, producer Jemmy. Yes, producer Jemmy. Okay. So after you listen to an episode of the show, what are the nuts and bolts of the things that you actually need to do to submit yourself? So there's just a few things. It's really simple. Your headshot and logos, your bio, and a show sample. And also a pitch, a very simple pitch of the angle. So that goes into the approach. Okay. So when it talks about the actual materials you want to do so far, it's the headshots and logos, your bio, and a sample of your own self on the microphone, whether it's yourself on your show, yourself as a guest on other shows. We'll dive into that in a second. So let's start with headshots and logos. There are a lot of different ways that you can provide these, a lot of the different ways that you can obtain them. You can get a professional photographer. If you go to a conference, a podcasting conference, oftentimes there are opportunities where they have people there to do headshots. You can book a session right then and there. That's an easy way to do it. Or there may be somebody who's local to you who can do a really great headshot. Or there's somebody who just just loves taking pictures and their camera's the bomb on their, on their phone. Or you know what? True story. The shot of me that's currently floating around as my current headshot, I took myself like this with the phone in front of my face. Okay. So, but you want a good collection of headshots. So the way that I send them over, and I have, some of them were done by a professional photographer. Hello, Natalie. Some of them were done by me, like I just explained, or some of them are from different, on stage or doing a presentation or something of that sort. So I have this collection of photos. So I have a folder on my computer. Then I constantly keep that fresh. And anytime somebody needs it, I just zip it up into a zip drive and I send it over as one file zipped up. So they get it that way. Now, Kate Erickson Dumas, who's my last guest, I thought was brilliant. She has a page on her website that has a few different headshots that she says, hey, use whatever you think works best in your template. Here's the link. And it's the link to her website. It was perfect. It was so easy for me to pull one and include it in the episode art for episode 69. Another way that people are doing that is by having a space like in a Dropbox. That's the word I'm looking for, a Dropbox, or a Google Drive folder that has all that collected in there. So then you just same thing, instead of a link to a landing page on your website, it's a link to a Dropbox or a Google Drive folder. So there are a lot of different ways you can deliver them, but you have to have a collection, have them ready now. Okay, so your headshots and your logos. So again, forgot to mention your logos. Also, if you have a logo, which I hope you do, if you don't, go get one. And your show art. So for example, my collection of things includes my headshot. It includes Flintstone Media logos, also includes Florida Podcast Network logos, and it includes show art for this show. So all of that is in that zip drive that I send over. So what is your collection of things that you're going to want to send over for people to have to use for their promotional materials when they have you on your show? Okay. Also, you want to make sure that you have your bio ready. Now, there are a few different ways that I do it. In the zip drive, I also have a little notepad thing, little text file that has a fairly short version of my bio, right? Easy to just copy and paste for them. It's right then and there, collected with my headshots. And in my email, when I send it over, I'll say, hey, there is a small bio in there. However, if you would like more or other alternative versions of my bio can be found at, and I have a landing page on my website, flintstonemedia.com/Jemmy, so /JAIME if you want to see it. And it has my different versions of my bio right then and there. So I include one in my email, but then I have alternative ones on my website and I link to that in my email. Now, Kate also had a page on her website, but she also did email me her bio. So that's another way that you can do it. So you can email people your bio. You can have a page on your website that has your bio. You can have a one sheet that has your bio, but you want to make sure you have a bio ready and have like 2 or 3 different versions of them, depending of varying lengths, because depending on what they're using it for, they might want the different alternatives to choose from. So headshots, logos, bio, and you're on your way. Now, the last material you want to be able to provide people, whether it's the initial email and you say hello, or if it's further in the conversation, but you want to have some samples of yourself. And so I personally like to send over a sizzle reel. So a sizzle reel is essentially just a series of clips that have been sewn together using my music bed. So from branding purposes, it still aligns. And what I like to include in those clips, like all together, it's 5 to 7 minutes as a full collection, as a full audio file. But each clip itself is only about 45 seconds or a minute long, something in that range. And each one is chosen for a different reason. It could be a moment where I feel like I shined on the microphone. It could be a moment where it made it really clear what my show is about or my mission is about or my message is about. It could be a moment that was really profound or interesting with a guest on the show. It could be a moment that captures me having fun or captures me being an MC, whatever it is. Truth be told, I have a few different sizzle reels for different reasons, but that's only because I'm all over the place. You can have a single sizzle reel and it could have a couple of clips of you on your own show. And as you collect them, a couple of clips of you as a guest on other shows that you use with permission. Okay. So we'll get into that in just a second. That's more the conversation of what to do after you've recorded the episode in this release. So we'll get that in just a second. But you want to create this sizzle reel. So again, it's just a clip, these short little clips, like a highlight reel, and then you edit it together using the music beds from your show because you already have them and it aligns with your branding, and you put that together as a single file. That way, the reason I like to do that, this is the reason I like this method. I don't want people to have to guess where to find good examples of my work. I don't want people to have to guess what I believe in or why I come to the microphone, right? I like to give them right then and there the short menu that they need. So there you go, sizzle reel. So I'll include a link in the show notes actually, because episode 48 of this show, I talked about how to create a sizzle reel, like in depth. So if this is resonating with you and you want like a step-by-step guide and instruction, I'll put the link right in the show notes to episode 48. Now, another way that you can do this is you can have your favorite clips, like great clips like this, instead of putting them in a sizzle reel, you can have, let's say you do have a landing page for that you use for submitting yourself different things. On that landing page, you could have some clips embedded right then and there for people to play. And similarly, you can use, if you have a YouTube channel, or if you don't, you can create one for this. You can have a YouTube channel where, again, asked with permission, you have clips from you being a guest on other shows or certain clips from your own show, highlights. And that is like a little mini clips on YouTube, 1 minute long each. And then you create a playlist, and that is your sizzle reel. It's the playlist. And each playlist on YouTube has its own URL. So you can send the link to your potential host that you're trying to get on their show, the link to this playlist, which shows a bunch of highlights of you, again, on other shows and on your own show, based on a playlist on YouTube. So 3 different ways. I do this as a reel. You can also do clips embedded on your website, or you can create a playlist with them on YouTube. And again, I will connect a link in the show notes to episode 48 on how to create a sizzle reel. So, all right. You've found a great show, or some great shows, a handful of great shows. Now you have all your materials at the ready. Okay. Now it's all about the approach. How do you get yourself actually to be a guest on the show? Well, this goes to the number one most important thing you need to remember as a podcaster in all things. Okay. Sort of. Because the one that I usually say is it's all about your listeners. This one's close. In this case, it's all about their listeners, right? You need to make sure that you provide an angle of your knowledge base and of your value that is particular to their audience. So listen to those past episodes and get a gauge of what is the value they're trying to give to their audience. Even if they're in those episodes, you can pick out something in particular that you can bounce off of, and you can say, I really liked when you discussed this. I think I can add more into this discussion, or I think I can look at it from this other angle, right? So you want to be able to angle your pitch, because I can get up here all day long and say, I've been a podcast producer since 2014. I have, a team. We've had so many shows that we've launched, 30 plus shows, blah, 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 millions of downloads. I can say that. But that doesn't really help me get onto that person's show, because all I've talked about is me. If instead I say to a potential host, I'm going to help your audience figure out how to tell their story through the power of a podcast, whether their own or as a guest on a show. The power of their story is going to help people understand their brand and help them leapfrog right over the know, like, trust and land sales. they'll have me on their show for that, because now I'm providing value for their audience. Big difference and crucial key component to this entire discussion. Okay. It is all about their listeners. So don't do the same pitch and approach for everybody. You really have to understand their audience and how you can angle your knowledge base to be of value for their audience. Okay. So listen to the past episodes, then also engage with that host on social media, show some genuine interest, comment on a post that they've made, share it, but don't do it just, kiss a little butt. Do it because you're genuinely trying to engage, right? So engage with them on social media. And then last but not least, submit yourself in a way that's going to be received well. So yes, you can send an email, but just do a quick check on their website. See if they have a space, like a form or something on their website where they ask people to fill out to submit themselves as a guest. If they have that form, fill out that form, okay? Because that's how they're telling you they want to receive your submissions. It could be just part of their process that they look into this one bucket of emails or data set or whatever where these submissions land, this one folder, okay? So you want to make sure that you land wherever it is that they're looking. So if there's a form, fill it out. If there are other instructions or whatever, follow those instructions. If they even say, hey, put this subject in your email if you want to be a guest, you make sure you use that subject. So just go to their website and look and see if that's there. Okay. And worst case scenario, send them a DM, send them an email, and get your foot in the door with the start of a conversation. You can send the materials later. Okay. Just at least get the conversation started with a hello about who you are and why you think you can add value to their audience. Okay. To their audience. So they get your stuff. They see your information. They see your pitch. They fall in love with you. Now they're ready to have you on the show. They've sent you a link to their calendar, whatever you guys have recorded. All the fun things have happened. Okay. So there are a couple more things that you can do to be the best podcast guest that you can be. And remember, you know what it feels like to be a host. And after you put out an episode, and you're all excited, and if that guest doesn't share it, you know how deflating that feeling can be, okay? You want to be the kind of guest that makes hosts excited to have you on. And in fact, the more that other podcasters see you doing that, they remember that. So they're more likely to say yes for you to be a guest on their show. But anyways, after you have been a guest on the show, regardless of what the host sends over, you can be proactive. Okay. This is something that I do with every single episode, every single appearance of everything I ever do ever. But especially when I'm a guest on a show, I will create and I want you to do this. I will create a blog post on my website for each episode that I'm on. So if I was on an episode of show A, there's a blog post about it, and then links through to the episode. Show B, blog post about it, links through to the episode. And on the blog post, I include the show art, episode art if it's available, a blurb about what the show is about and about the host if I can, and of course linking through to that show's website, that episode, whatever I can link through to. I share it on social media. I do all that. Also, a little note about social media. This is kind of like a 102 tip mixed in here for you. So if you have your own website, what you want to do is you can create this post, but certain places like Instagram, you can't put a clickable link in the post itself. So you want to have a shortened URL. So what I do is I create a really short vanity URL. So as an example, you heard one at the top of the episode. I said that you can find out more information about my appearance on the podcasting panel at the Mom 2.0 Summit by going to flintstonemedia.com/mom2. Well, that /mom2 is a vanity redirect. So I've created a vanity redirect. This is 102. Okay. So it's above the level of this episode. Maybe I'll take a deep dive into this later. But if you can, create a redirect that's very short and easy to remember that forwards and links to the longer longer URL for the blog post. But anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. So that's the 102 thing. So I do that every time. But once you have that blog post, then share it on social media and just be very active. That blog post, if there is a video version of the episode, then embed that on the blog post. If there's an audio version of the episode, and if you can't just find it from the player, then ask the host, hey, is there embed code for the player that I can put on my website? Is there a direct download link? What else can I put in? What are the, what's the description? What's the title of the episode? Just ask for whatever information you can so you can fill out that blog post as richly as possible. So again, getting a little bit into podcasting 102, because we're talking about I'm going to start talking about SEO, which is a total thing I can nerd out on. But my point is you want to fill that out for each episode that you're on. Okay. The more that you do that, then number one, the more that people, again, other podcasters take note, they remember that. They're like, yes, you're going to be a great guest to have on. But also number two, what it does is it starts to allow you to build a portfolio. So now as you submit yourself to other shows, you can say, and also look at all these other appearances I have, or just the fact that there is this grid of blog posts where you've been a guest on, 10, 15, you're like, yes, obviously she's awesome or he's awesome, right? So the more that you can do that, you're showing off your ability to be a really great guest. So the more likely you are to keep landing those yeses. Okay. Now, after you're a guest, another thing that you can do, a couple other level up things you can do, not only to share it as a blog post, but also possibly with sharing it right on your own RSS feed. Now, here's where I believe that you shouldn't share a full episode because that takes away from the downloads of the original host. However, what I do believe that you can do, which feeds the downloads of the original host and also celebrates it on your own show, is ask that host. You can even send timestamps if you have a particular part, but ask the host if there's like a 5-minute clip of the show, of your appearance on the show, that if they wouldn't mind if you included it on your own show, on an episode of your own podcast. And it's beautiful because on your own podcast, it levels you up in value, right? Because it levels you up as an expertise on this additional pedestal as being a guest on this other show. But also it gives you the opportunity to just keep adding to your portfolio and getting people to know like all the different ways that you are able to speak on this topic, right within your own show. So it's part of your episode. So you'll have the main meat of your episode and then say, and if you remember, I told you I was going to be a guest on so-and-so show. Well, I was, and it was awesome. I'll put a link in the show notes for you, but here's a quick clip of me on that show. And it's beautiful. So you can do it that way. Just a quick clip. Again, I fall on one line. I don't like to include full episodes. I think it takes away from the original host downloads, but that's what I believe in. Ask for at least a clip, though. It's really, really important. And one last thing that you can do to make yourself like the best guest ever. Invite that host onto your show. So if you've had a really, really great time on their show, return that favor in kind. If the chemistry was there and they clearly had great value, have them on your show and complete the cycle. So that's everything that you can do to to submit yourself as best practices, to submit yourself as a guest on other podcasts, from where to find them, what you need to submit yourself, and the approach you need to take, and then how at the end of it, you can really, really make that host really happy that they invited you on in the first place. So I hope all of this helps you become a really great guest, because as Kate and I discuss, it helps you grow your own show. All right, now let's end with one more of my daily tips pulled from TikTok, if it's still around, Instagram, YouTube, Clapper, and all the social media. So make sure that you're following me there so you get all of my tips and you get them first. And if there's something that you want me to address in a future tip or in a future full episode, please go ahead and email me, jaime@flintstonemedia.com. Also email me if this show is helping you grow your own show, because now at podcastingyourbrand.com, there's a space for shows that are using this show to grow, like Back of the Cereal Box. So you can have your own show's logo, your own show's art right there on my landing page, and it'll click through to your show. Always an opportunity for great exposure. So you can email me, again, Jemme, Jaime, at flintstonemedia.com, and I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to support you in all things podcasting because this industry has done so much for me. So, all right, it's producer Jemme signing off for now before we get to our last daily tip. But remember, the only thing more powerful than your voice is your spirit to use it. So let's turn that mic on.
Hey, it's producer Jemme, straight off of my presentation for PodFest Global 2023. Had a fantastic time. If you haven't checked it out, please do. But I'm here today with your tip for the day, and we're going to continue focusing in on mobile podcasting. So yesterday I talked about how the key to keeping the ambiance where it belongs in the background and not overpowering the conversation is using a dynamic microphone. Here's another trick for that. Let's say there's a lot of wind or traffic is flowing by you or something like that. Use your body as a shield, a sound shield. So take that microphone and place your body between the microphone and the source of the sound. It'll block the wind, it'll block the traffic, or whatever else is going on. And come back here every day for more tips, podcastingyourbrand.com. I'm producer Jemme.